And we're back. You're watching Sports Federation TV. I'm Lenyukta Chetty. And joining me now from the exciting world of climbing is the chairperson of Western Cape Climbing, Chris Naude, to tell us about their recent adventures. Welcome back, Chris.
Thank you. Oh, tongue twisted around your name.
Lenyukta. Well, that's all good. And you've just come back from a very long trip, so I'm going to say you're jet lagged.
We had an amazing trip. Thank you. I as a family thing, it was fantastic. I went with my son, who was the climber, and our first competition was the Boulder World Cup in Munich, and then we had 10 days of relaxing, where we went to Switzerland to go and climb there a bit. Just in the mountains, and then we had the Youth World Championships in Innsbruck. So we had a wonderful time. Thank you.
Well, that sounds amazing. It sounds like a Euro trip of note. And you said for relaxation you went to Switzerland to climb some more.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, there's people watching now that may not know exactly what your federation does. Give us some insight into that, please.
Sure. So climbing is a wonderful sport. It's a lifestyle sport rather than maybe a purely competitive sport. So you can climb from youngsters. We have 6-7-year-olds climbing, right up to 60-year-olds, as you can see, climbing in the mountains, and in some cases competitively as well. So there are a number of different kinds of climbing, or different disciplines. So we have bouldering, which was our first World Cup, which we'll talk about in a minute, which is low-level stuff up to about 5 meters or so, no ropes, very, very hard, very technical, very popular now. It's what I would say is the snowboarding of climbing, of the rock world. So it's like as snowboarding is to skiing, so we have bouldering is to climbing. It's a lot of the youngsters are taking part in the bouldering world. Very sociable. It's really easy, accessible. In Cape Town, we're really lucky. We have some really great bouldering venues right on our doorstep. We have Rocklands, probably one of the top 3 climbing bouldering destinations in the world. We have international athletes coming out here every year, every winter, coming out for the Rockland season, and so that's the bouldering side. And then there's lead climbing, which is what most people will know for climbing. So that would be taking a rope up with you, and you have a belayer standing at the bottom, so that if you do fall, you get caught in your harness and come to no injury, which is what makes rock climbing pretty safe, really.
Yeah.
I always tease my cycling friends and say, why don't you do something safe like rock climbing?
Well,
which is a joke, but
yeah, it's a joke. But you have those. The last time you were on the show, you showed us all the safety mechanisms you keep even for the bouldering to avoid injury. Hey.
Exactly. So the bouldering, you have you carry up what amounts to a small mattress, so that when you fall, you land on that, so that the smaller rocks and things don't hurt you. Yeah. But in essence, you're falling from only a couple of meters, so you're not going to come to any harm there.
Yeah.
Other than maybe a twisted ankle or something like that if you fall awkwardly.
Would you say this sport would appeal to those who prefer the outdoors and adrenaline kind of activities?
It certainly does have a great following amongst the adrenaline junkies. But a lot of other people who just enjoy being outdoors, people who like to hike and climb and get out on their own. Very, very individualistic sport. I like to use the term it's for the social individualist. So it's a very individual sport, but you do it with other people. And I say that because it's one of the sports which you don't have a competitor, really. It's you and the rock. In many individual sports, if one equates it to tennis, there's an opponent who's trying to make you fail. In climbing, there's only the rock that can make you fail.
Yeah, or yourself.
Or yourself. Yeah.
Well, Chris, let's talk about the World Cup. the World Cup of specifically bouldering. Hey.
That's correct. Yeah. So the Munich World Cup, there are a number of World Cup events. They have 6 World Cup events throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
The Munich one is probably the biggest one. Munich has a huge following of in the climbing world. So it's a really big sport in Munich, and it was so exciting to watch. And I pray that one day in South Africa we'll see that sort of enthusiasm for climbing. It was particularly good this year as their local hero Jan Hoyer he won the competition in the end, and the crowd there were 6,000 people watching this bouldering competition, and they were screaming. They were so
it was
excited.
Like a concert.
It was like a rock concert.
Yeah, well, pardon the pun.
There we go. And it was just so exciting to watch, and to see the development of the sport, with the upcoming 2020 Olympics and climbing being admitted to the Olympic Games for the first time in 2020, which will be in Tokyo. We see the Japanese have really thrown themselves behind the climbing scene, and in the final competition, in the finals of the competition, we had 4 from Japan, 1 from Korea, and 1 from Germany.
And they probably started doing it last month, hey?
Well, it's pretty new for them, but they have really put a lot of effort behind it. One of the coaches was telling me that they have now, in Tokyo alone, they have 500 bouldering gyms.
Sure. But the Japanese have such a strong culture of excellence in everything they do with a lot of the Asian countries.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, the resources as well.
Yeah, the resources too. But my son does say they have an attitude of, you will win. Yeah,
you will win. There's no other
There's
option.
There's not really an alternative to that one.
Yeah. So there was also the Youth World Championship as well. Tell us about that.
So after a couple of days of relaxing in the mountains in Switzerland, we went to the Youth World Championship, where we had quite a large team this year. We had 22 climbers from South Africa, 14 of them from the Western Cape, I'm really proud to say. The youth range from the ages of 13 to 17. So that's the kind of age we're looking at there. Split into 3 different categories, age categories, and competing against the best in the world. So many people would have heard of Ashima, the little Japanese New York. So she's ancestry is Japanese, but she's born and grown up in New York, and she's regarded as the best female climber at the moment, even at the tender age of 16. And she was at the competition competing along with her family, which was really great. It was one of the really nice things about that competition, actually, is to meet with the worldwide climbing community again. So we've seen them at a few world championships, and we see the same people crop up again and again, and we re-establish friendships, and they make plans to come out and climb with us in Rocklands, and vice versa.
We always say with all the sports, when you go away to your national championships or international championships, it's like seeing your long lost cousins or something.
Absolutely, yeah. It's so wonderful, and you can be standing there and watching a climb, and suddenly somebody rushes up to you and gives you a big hug.
Yeah, they're so happy to see you.
Yeah, it's actually really heartwarming to see, and people retain these friendships for years and years.
Absolutely, yeah, and luckily for things like Facebook and stuff, these relationships can be maintained.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's really easy now, and you see the photographs of them in their own national competitions and their own regional competitions, and
it's one of the best perks, for being involved in a sport. It's the relationships that you form with people. It's one of the biggest and best perks.
Absolutely, and climbing is quite amazing in that respect. There's absolutely no antagonism. So you'll see competitors, they're all competing in the same competition, and they're shouting for their competitors to do better.
Yeah.
And I find that it's quite touching to see that kind of attitude.
Yeah,
they want their competitors to do well, and then they want to go and do better.
Excellent. That's the right attitude.
Which is a really good attitude to have.
So Chris, speaking about the competition itself, how did the South Africans do, and specifically our Kapanas?
Not as well as we'd hoped. We were hoping for a better result. We were hoping to get into the semi-finals. We didn't make it. So we're not at the bottom. We didn't come last. Our first competitions, a couple of years back, we were like right at the bottom, and we're not there anymore. We're sort of still in the lower half, but
Okay.
but only just.
But
now.
you competed
we
against the
competed
world's
again, and
best.
these were the world's best. And the standard this year was really outstanding. I mean, the standard of the climbing and the difficulty of the problems that were set was quite something to see. With the upcoming Youth Olympics next year, there's a huge upsurge of interest in it, and the guys are training really hard, which made it quite amazing to see the sudden jump in standard. So that was all good.
Well, Chris, let's take a look at some of the footage you brought from the World Champs, so our viewers at home can have a great idea, a better idea.
Thank you.
Chris, that footage was of an actual event. Can you talk us through it?
Absolutely. That was from the Boulder World Cup now that was held in Munich, as you could see from the Olympic Stadium. Many people would have remembered that from the old days when I was young. That stadium was built, and they built the wall up specifically for the event in the Olympic Stadium. So what you have is a wall with very different angles on it, mostly pretty what we call steep walls, which means they're pretty overhanging, and then they put those big colorful volumes on it, and those are things which largely are used to balance on and test your ability to balance. They often used to hold so that you test your core strength, because you've got to just squeeze it and hold it and stay on the wall like that.
The level of agility that is required and strength.
Absolutely. So it's a combination of strength, flexibility. I don't know if maybe you would have noticed some of the weird body movements that people may manage to get into to keep the balance right on that wall. And it's really technical.
Is it a lot about finding your own center of gravity?
Absolutely. It's very technical. It's if you move your foot before your hand or your hand before your foot, that makes all the difference. And you'll see just a slight twist of an ankle can mean getting up that wall or not. And from that point of view, it's really an amazingly strategic and game as well. You've only got 4 minutes. You've never seen that wall before, so you're seeing this problem for the first time, and you've got 4 minutes to get up it, which is really not a lot of time. In 4 minutes, some people would look at that and not even have figured out that this is possible, let alone actually being able to do it.
It's like literally solving a problem then.
Absolutely. It's the
Well,
problem solving.
physically solving a problem.
It's the physical
Yeah.
problem solving that is so amazing about bouldering. So that's what we were watching there.
So many
Um,
dimensions to your sport, and I'm glad we got an opportunity to delve a little bit deeper into that this week. Now let's talk about the selection criteria. You mentioned 4 minutes. They
mhm.
have to well summit or
Right.
or complete the course. I
So,
presume.
so that's correct. Yeah. So in bouldering, we have competitions here in Cape Town. So we would have club competitions, and then we have a provincial championship.
Hmm.
And our best climbers will go from the Western Cape. We would go to our national championship, which might be in Cape Town, but last year it was in Johannesburg. So we do those competitions to see who the top climbers are.
Hmm.
The selection from there is always a tricky one, and I've done quite a lot of talking to other sports and see how they do it, as to whether it's an absolute level that one has to get to, or do you just take the best that you've got, regardless of what of how good they are. And we've kind of taken a middle road on that one, and some of the people um, probably are not ready for international competition, but going to that international competition grows them gives them the experience and a little bit more of the headspace
Hmm.
around international competitions that I think you really need. And they do come back incredibly motivated to train for next year and improve their standard. So I'm really hoping that in the next year or two we will see a couple of our climbers really excelling in these international competitions.
Well, especially
And
now with the fact that you've got climbing in the next Olympics.
yeah, no, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, but we are at a big disadvantage sitting down here at the bottom of Africa, because some of the European competitors, we were chatting to some of them from France, for instance, who have done 10 international competitions this year already. We have this one that we can attend and get to. So that's
Yeah.
our experience for the year, is the World Championship in terms of international
Mm.
competitions, whereas they have international competitions into European competitions and so on, many of them throughout the year. So
So that is one of the selection issues that you mentioned. Are
mm,
there any other challenges that you are facing currently?
there are so many. As an administrator of any sport, I think
Mm.
there are many challenges. One of the things that we have is the difference in climbing, for instance, in being, as we spoke about earlier, a very individualistic sport, is the affordability of traveling as a team.
Mm.
If you have to travel as a team and you have to go with the whole group to be there in time for the first climbers event, and you've got to stay there as a group until the last climber climbs his last climb. It in this particular case, it was 11 days of being overseas, which is pretty expensive.
Mm.
And with our rand being what it is now, traveling around overseas for lengthy periods of time gets really expensive. And I think we're going to have to review those kind of policies and say, is that really necessary to do that in a sport which is not like a rugby team where we all have to run on at the same time?
Yeah.
We're competing on different days and different times of day and so on. So we need to evaluate some of those things. That was I think is going to be quite a big challenge for us in the future. Managing a group of 22 people when they're coming and going at different times presents its own challenges. So
Absolutely.
I'm not sure how we're going to end up with that. But the cost of sending teams now to international competitions, next year's in Canada, it's going to be the same, maybe even a bigger financial burden than it is at
Then
the
we need to
moment.
have a world champion
So
bouldering in the Western Cape.
absolutely,
Hey,
absolutely. There
that'll
we go.
solve that
There we
problem.
go.
Well, and we
Yeah,
live in the most beautiful city in the world.
there we go. Yeah.
Chris, how can people get involved with climbing?
There are a couple of good climbing gyms in the Western Cape. So we've got City Rock, which does bouldering and lead climbing. They're currently in Observatory, although they're moving to Barton Island, and we've got another really good bouldering gym here in Barton Island, Block 11, just around the corner. But if they want to contact anybody and they want some help, they can just contact us at Western Cape Climbing, all one word, .co.za, and it's info@Western Cape Climbing. So any advice they'd like on climbing, whether it be competition climbing or climbing outdoors, if we can help, we will help.
All right. And there are people there to help newbies
Oh,
get
absolutely.
started.
Absolutely. No, there are a number of different ways. There's clubs that one can join, either just loose affiliations of interested climbers, or some more formal clubs where there's coaching involved and more formal kind of taking kids and putting them through classes and teaching them how to go about climbing. And one of the things that we do, regardless of what kind of club it is take them through the safety of climbing, which is obviously pretty critical. It's like crossing a highway. You can do it, but you need to be careful.
Yeah.
So it's not dangerous if you take the right precautions. If you don't take the right precautions, you can die. So it is the attention to safety issues is always a big one.
All right. Thank you, Chris, for joining us once again, and all the best with your preparations leading up to your next big event.
Thank you. We've got our selections coming up for the Youth Olympic Games at the end of the year, which is the next big training session that will happen.
Okay. And it's time for the Bashes competition. Remember, Bashes, Cape Town's favorite cool drink, and everybody's got their favorite flavor, and everybody's got their Bashes story. Now, to win your case of assorted Bashes drinks, all you need to do is SMS Bashes to 33090. That's Bashes to 33090. Now, last week's winner of that case of assorted Bashes drinks is Samantha Harker. So please stay tuned.